Well, hello there. Welcome to chapter 20. It's over. Do you remember that little challenge I told you about? That little call out that we were going to do together? Get your note. Get your note right now. Wherever you put it, whatever you wrote down, whatever memory or thing that you have to figure out, do that right now. I'll give you a couple seconds. I'll wait. Go ahead. You can even pause the video if you need to. You got it? Okay. Open your note or whatever. Keep that in mind. Let's go over the final chapter. So, it had been a few days since Abby had paint thrown at her, and they're still, living together and totally, the perfect couple, most perfectest ever. And he finds her paint-covered shirt just on the floor, because apparently he doesn't have a hamper, and she just hides dirty clothes in places like a fucking chipmunk. I don't know why, but it makes him laugh hysterically. He words it like that. Cool. So, he pins her shirt to the wall, because it's all about turning our pain into art, man, and you people wouldn't understand. So, it's very much that, and they're getting ready for school, and so they're waiting, and the bus doesn't show up, and they're still waiting, and it's like, what the fuck? So, they decide to just, okay, well, we'll watch TV, I guess, and they turn on the news, and there's, this big fire, and it's like, oh, man, that's pretty fucked up, and then Abby's like, oh my god, James, that's our school! Yes, the school has been burned down. It truly was that. The school caught on fire and is burned to the fucking ground. And so, of course, there's an investigation, which takes about a paragraph. I use paragraph lightly. And it's arson. And it's the crazy guidance counselor who hates Abby so fucking much. She got fired for being a total bitch. And her response to that was to set the school on fire. And then she's been locked up. And yeah, so she's in jail. And none of their stuff got lost, just the building itself, which means, next year they're going to a much nicer school and a better place, and it's all going to be awesome and great, which sounds like sequel baiting. But there is no sequel to this book, so I guess it's not. So they just start keeping eyes on the news and everything, and then at one point they just have to go see the burned down school. And the gym and the football stadium, I guess, were not damaged because they're detached buildings. And Jason's there, and you remember Jason, the guy who stopped the school shooter, the football star, the one that Greg beat up. I'm sorry, James. And he's just like, yeah, man, no, it was that crazy lady, and, she's in jail now and shit. And Abby is just like, oh, the karma, it's what she deserves, ha 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 ha. And she continues to call him hubby, which is weird, that she's still saying that. It's just randomly introduced, and it makes no sense. And yeah, so Jason's like, oh, well, anyway, I guess I'll see you guys at the new school next year. See you later. And he goes back off to practice, I guess. I don't know, the football or whatever. I don't know what the fuck he plays, because it's never really spelled out. Or if it is, I just didn't pay attention. And those are both options. Those are both actually pretty good options. And then we get to the last line of the last chapter of the last page of this book. The last line is literally this. A line from our friend James. Quote, well, I guess this means I won't be running for president. See, editor Moonhorse would have inserted a laugh track after I said that. If it was fucking funny. And that's how the book ends. That's it. It's over. That was the last fucking part. Oh, God, what the fuck did I read? Okay, let's go over all that we have learned, right, class? Let's get back into this, huh? What did we learn from this experiment? Not much. Nothing good. That's true. But also, we've learned that this is 110%, by my professional opinion, and I am a professional connoisseur of terrible shit, as we all know. My professional opinion states that this is, in fact, written entirely like something that would be on fucking Wattpad or fanfiction.net or Archive of Our Own, one of those fanfiction sites. This is that. This is absolutely that. It is written 110% like that. See, I had speculations that it was like that. I had these kind of well-informed, feelings that that was the way he was doing it. But the ending really drove that point home. The ending, or lack thereof, because that's just a chapter, and it just kind of stops. There's really no conclusion that actually kind of makes everything fit together. We don't get that. It just deadpan stops. Which is how a lot of these end. A lot of terrible fanfictions do exactly that. They either don't get finished, or they just straight deadpan stop and conclude nothing. Because conclusions don't matter. None of that matters. You were trying to tell the most dramatic emo story that has ever been dramatic or emoed. It does not have to make sense. It does not have to be any kind of fully rounded thing. It has to be dramatic and romantic. That's the entire purpose. Personally, I feel like it failed on both fronts. It was hilarious and strange, but it wasn't dramatic or romantic. So, if you were hoping to make the single greatest mock-up fanfiction, not even a fanfiction, because it's about whatever, it's about stuff he just made up, but written like one, then yeah, I'd say you successfully did that. This reads like the terrible fanfictions that I have read. This reads like the terrible fanfictions that were written by people who intentionally wrote terrible fanfictions because they thought they were funny. This is so well blended into that I could see either one of those things being true. But given the amount of history we have, given the amount of things that Onision has said specifically about this book, we know that that's not true, though. We know that he wanted this to be taken a very, very serious work. As a very serious work. I worded that all wrong, but fuck it. My brain is turning into sludge just because of this. So, he really wanted that to be interpreted incredibly seriously. This was not a young adult fiction. This was not, some sort of treat it with kid gloves. This was meant to be taken 110% seriously. An adult, intelligent story about high schoolers. Sure. And this was supposed to be taken as seriously as it was presented. All of these dramatic things, creating the most powerful romantic couple that has ever graced the written word or the sordid page. Like, what the actual fuck was this? Because it wasn't that. This definitely ain't, it wasn't Shakespeare. It wasn't even Princess America. This was a whole different thing. This was a special kind of thing. This fits right into my same thing that I've always said about certain people. Certain individuals, rather. When it comes to internet fame and misfortune. I've said this a lot about Chris Chan. To bring Chris Chan into this for a minute, because if you're going to talk about terrible stories, Chris Chan's got to show up at least once. Once a while back, someone asked me if I would consider Chris's transition from male to female as a legitimate transition, and is gender identity as legitimate. I go back and forth with pronouns with Chris Chan. I can call them, he or she, mainly because I don't think Chris is definable by the terms we have. Chris simply is their own gender. Chris simply is their own identity. There is no other way to define something like that. That's just who they are, and their personality has become all-encompassing of every fiber of everything that they do. What is Chris Chan's gender identity? It's Chris Chan. What is Chris Chan's sexual orientation? It's Chris Chan. Why did I bring this up? Because I feel the exact same way about Onision. Onision has come to a point in his being that everything just is him. There is no other way to define it. It is so encapsulated within itself that it cannot be defined as something else. I can't think of other ways to define his writing other than to use examples of his personality. Because it's just that. I don't really know how else to put it. This entire thing was basically a glimpse into his own mind. How he thinks a fantasy romance between a self-insert character, so his own self, and some sort of incredibly emo high school chick who's totes hot would just play out. And then the drama around that he would find interesting to be like, this is the universe upon which I am prepared to hoist myself. This is the world in which I am prepared to live. Now, to any of us, it sounds insane. To any of us, it sounds like the strangest, most bizarre kind of creation that could be. Because there's all this horrible shit just happening all the time. And yet, that's not the way it's meant to be perceived. That is not the way that this is supposed to go. This is his idealized creation. This was his masterwork. And then he wrote 2 more books. So this is not the magnum opus. This is only a step getting closer to it. There are others. And we'll get to those. Maybe. If I'm not, on fire. But there's a couple other points that I really need to address here. Something that, while watching other people who've talked about this book and talked about Onision in the past, have not addressed. They usually address his personality, the things he's done, his, YouTube career and things like that. But the one thing that I've noticed, especially with a lot of people who have talked about his writing, is this one particular point sticks with me, and has stuck with me through the entirety of this book. I've said this before. I forget which chapter, but I have said this before. Probably more than one chapter, honestly. That I have a very sneaking suspicion that his learning to do all this writing, his basis of understanding when it comes to how to write all this stuff, comes from the fact that he was probably been exposed to a lot of... Exposed is the wrong word. Probably spent a lot of time reading fan fiction. I don't know what kind. That's for sure. I don't know exactly what he'd be into. But again, this reads too much like a fan fiction for me to not think that. And I know what a lot of people have said, well, it reads that way because of his bad writing. Like, oh no, there's more to it than that. See, I read Princess America, that's a different one. I've read Empress Teresa. Empress Teresa is bad writing, but it's bad writing on its own merit. Bad writing because Norman is so self-absorbed that he cannot fathom learning anything from anyone else. It's him or it's no one. It's ego at its highest. Which is why it's boring as fucking dirt and I don't recommend it. Norman Bouton's book, Empress Teresa, is pretty much the book that Patrick Bateman would write if he was interested in that kind of thing from American Psycho. Because ego dictates everything. But, back to this one. There are too many tropes that are associated with fanfiction things too many specific ways of writing. That this isn't just he's not a good writer. This is he's read a lot of other people's fan fictions and then wrote one, even though it's not about another property. It's his own IP, but the writing style is entirely fanfiction.net. I mentioned this before because of the way everything is kind of laid out and how each chapter is fully encapsulated within itself. It starts with a thing and it ends in a way. Usually on a cliffhanger, but there is always a kind of rise and fall to every single chapter. There is just that, and most things are encapsulated in those chapters. There are certain things that aren't, but most things are. And the reason that this is brought up, the reason why I'm even talking about it, is because a lot of people who write fan fiction, a lot of fan fiction writers, especially amateur fan fiction writers, and I can't believe that's a phrase I actually had to say, usually write these things as if you're writing episodes of a TV show. This is heavily influenced by the idea of how episodic animes work, and there's always like that, on the last time in this show, and then next time, and there's always a thing. So things started getting written like that after the big anime boom in the 90s, and when those kids, like me, grew up and they started writing fan fiction. I don't think I've ever written fan fiction. Not unless I drank that memory away. But either way, I have the distinct impression that that's where a lot of this came from. In fact, I'm pretty positive that's where a lot of this came from. There's only one thing that could make this 100% positive, which is most people who read and can identify these things have some sort of connection to it. Personally, I can read and identify these tropes because, well, at this point, it's my job. Before that, it was just funny. I like the comedy of terrible fanfiction, so, that's why I did it. But now, I read these kind of things for you guys. So it's not just because it's funny. There is a certain need to know these things. The only other reason that you would know these things so specifically and follow these tropes so succinctly is if you also wrote fanfiction. What I'm postulating here is the same conclusion you've probably already come to, which is I believe somewhere on the internet, maybe not anymore, maybe he removed them, but at some point in time, Onision wrote fanfiction, probably on fanfiction.net, but I don't know for certain. I couldn't even begin to guess what it was written about, what fandom he even followed, how he would come to this conclusion. I don't know. But a very, very strong feeling in me says that that is probably true. Now, a lot of people, when it comes to him, go sifting through every bit of information looking for all the most negative and horrible things they could possibly find. Because there's a lot of really negative and horrible things that he's done. I'm not here to go over that. I'm here for what was written. There are a million other channels with much more articulate and intelligent people who can tell you about all the things that he did. That's not me. I'm here to read bad stories and laugh at them. It's my job. But on that note, digging through stuff about him specifically, I know that there's a lot of bad things. But I want to know who found his fanfiction.net profile. I can't prove he has one, and as far as I know, he doesn't. And as far as anyone knows, there's no evidence that one exists. But believe me, I'm willing to wager that it probably does. He has or had a fanfiction profile somewhere. Maybe not that website, maybe a different website. But given the way these things are written, yeah. No, it's there. Somewhere. Hidden in the endless mists of the internet and time itself. And given how very specific he used all of these things, all of these tropes, all of these tools. He's written more than one story. This isn't a thing you get one and done. This isn't a bang out and then you're finished. There's more than one. And they're out there. And I want them. I want to read these things. I want to read them to you in a video. So, I, again, hold no hope that we'll ever find them. Because given the way that Onision takes care of data, there is a 50-50 chance they still exist somewhere where you could even find them. But there is a possibility. So, you know, good luck. But also don't stress if you can't find anything. It happens. Besides, if you can't find anything, don't really worry about it too hard. I did just say that, but I'm leading up to a point. Because there's still 2 books. We only finished 1. And eventually I'm going to get to the other 2. I'm just not brave enough tonight. This is the end of Stones to Abbigale. Bereft of life, she rests in peace. We are done with this, and we cast it aside. But we'll always have the memories, and the scars, and the burned down high school, I guess. The fuck did I just read? It's really what I should change the name of this entire thing to. All of these book reviews, I should just change it to a show called The Fuck Did I Just Read, but I know YouTube won't let me do that. They don't like it when you say fuck. So, anyway, that's the end of this. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh my god. Nope, that's where we are. That's it. There you go. I love you all so very much, and thank you for following me and supporting me through whatever the fuck I just did to myself. You know, in most places, this is probably considered self-harm, but, I mean, it's, fuck it, right? I mean, just fuck it. I'm obviously playing this up for a laugh. I mean, come on, I'm fucking with you. I love you all so very much. You're all wonderful. Please take care of yourselves. Don't read this book. It's not good. Read better things. Read good things. I'll read the bad things for you. It's what I do. I'll see you in the next episode of whatever the hell the next one is, because there aren't any more chapters to this. So, you know, see you around, everybody. I love you all. Goodbye.